Too hot to handle, too cold to hold. I'm focused on changing the game. I'm in total control. It was written in the scroll. I'm keeping it simple and plain. My pedals to the floor, no less and no more. Cause I'm destined to manifest change.
And I challenge everyone out there, the next time you're faced with some type of resistance, right? Instead of saying, why me? I want you to ask yourself, how bad do you want it?
Fear sometimes gets mistaken for respect. That seems like a big theme of street life.
I wish my mother and father was here to see this, but we definitely gonna dedicate this one to them.
My new vision and composure, yo, it rattle cast. Cause what you lack inside and what you hide, I'll help you find. Just swallow your pride so inner peace can coincide and it can ride low. Like my peoples in the West, rocking this new version of me like an armor vest. Deflecting all bullets of hate, cause I can't relate. Manifesting a fresh change in my mind state. Cause I'm destined to manifest.
Welcome back to the Manifest Change podcast. It's your boy Terrell and Maris. Boys, Terrell Jenkins and Maris Blackwell, with our special guest, Coach Jamie Johnson Easter. Didn't know that your last name was hyphenated, my friend. So that was something that I learned just now. But tonight we're joined by Jamie. He's a man who has dedicated much of his life to leading by example. As a husband, father of four, entrepreneur, youth mentor, and coach, Jamie Johnson Easter believes that the greatest legacy we leave isn't measured by our accomplishments, but the lives we influence. Amen. Through his work in business, his commitment to developing young people, and his unwavering faith, Jamie has learned that success means little if it isn't passed on to the next generation. His story is one of resilience, purpose, and choosing to build a life that outlives him. Please help us welcome Jamie Johnson Easter to the Manifest Change podcast.
Man, thank you.
Your audience will be clapping for you.
Awesome, man. I appreciate that intro. It was a beautiful intro. Thank you, Brother Terrell, for having me on here. Thank you, Brother Maris. We were just chopping it up a little bit before we went live. And yeah, man, got to learn a little bit about Brother Maris. Man, you guys are awesome. Both of you guys. Terrell, you already know how I feel about you and the family, man. Y'all are absolutely crushing it. You are one of those fathers that I look to because you lead by example. You are in the field. Every time I go on Instagram, brother, I swear you got a new coaching shirt on. I didn't even know you did baseball. Wait a minute. I see you out there.
I know that caught you off guard a little bit.
I said, hold on, wait a minute. Is that Terrell? He was just doing the football. I love it though, brother. You remind me a lot of myself. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And the fact that you are out there leading by example, you're out there in the field with your children, being a role model, someone that they can look up to.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Hats off to you, man.
I'm going to tell you what that's from, man. I'm going to tell you what it's from. It's not because of any other reason other than like, I just want to make sure that my children are having the best possible experience that they can have playing youth sports. You know, my dad was never my coach. You know, our relationship extended basically just to like the neighborhood basketball court, you know, when it comes to like him coaching me, you know, the battles that we had when I was a teenager. But he never coached me in any sport, but he was a collegiate football player. He played football for Liberty University. And I always aspired to be like him, even though I never really saw him in action at all. And so what it comes down to, man, it's just like I don't really trust anybody to do what I can do as it relates to, you know, the mentorship and just teaching him how to be, you know, a good player and a good person. So that's where it comes from.
Absolutely, brother. That was awesome. I can relate as well, you know. So growing up, my father wasn't really in my life, you know. It's crazy because I used to actually run into my dad. So like anytime I saw my dad, I used to like run into him at like JCPenney's or I would run into him at a grocery store. And I'd be like, hey, Dad, like, how you been? Get my number. That's really how the relationship was. Like, I used to have to run into him every couple of years. And, you know, as a kid, it used to hurt me because I used to always think to myself, you know, why my dad never want to spend time with me. You know, I'm actually named after my father. He does have, my father does have 3 other children, but I'm actually named after him, you know? So it used to always hurt me because I was just like, man, you know, why dad not trying to, you know, be around me? Why he don't want me to come to his house? And I later in life figured out that, oh, wow, it was really my mother and my father trying to protect me because my dad was into some stuff that I shouldn't have been around. See, but it took me to get older to realize, you know what? I think my dad wasn't in my life because he knew the things that he was doing and he knew that it was going to affect me. And my dad seen from a young age what type of kid I was. He knew that I was very different from his other children. And I think he purposefully stayed away from me because he knew that I was going to want to be just like him. So you know, and I think, you know, I think it took him passing and it took a lot of emotional maturity for me to be able to admit that, right? Because I wanted to, you know, he was always like, I'm doing all this because my dad wasn't there. He was always like the driving force behind why I was doing everything, especially when I became a parent, right? I had my first daughter when I was 21 years old. And I used to always be like, you know, I'm gonna be there for her because my dad wasn't there for me. You know what I mean? I'm going to do all the things that he didn't do for me, you know? And halfway through that, it wasn't until, you know, after he passed and I was about 25, 26 years old when I had the realization, like, I don't have to continue to hold that, right? That doesn't have to be what fuels me. I can be a great father just because I want to be a great father. It doesn't have to be because my dad necessarily wasn't a great father, right? And when I look back, you know, because you never really know. There's always like multiple sides to a story. You know what I mean? And him and my mother's relationship was so bad and so toxic that it was never going to work anyway. You know what I mean? So learning those things as I got older, it kind of put a different picture in my mind than what I had growing up. Like my dad went from being this deadbeat, you know, to, man, you know what? I really believe that my dad understood that I needed to be around my mother, right? And I needed, and she was going to be able to provide for me the life that I needed because where he lived in off Crater Road in Petersburg is nothing but gang activity. He knew that I was going to more than likely be caught up in that, like how my brothers were. So
that's what I was going to ask you. So where are you from?
All right. So originally I was born in Petersburg, Virginia. And when I was about 7 years old, I moved to Hopewell, Virginia, which is still the ghetto. And when I was 13 years old, my mother, she had ended up getting married to my stepdad, who is from Mexico. And he had a really good, he had a drywall company. So in Mexico, he learned how to do drywall. He came over here, him and his cousin started a company. And he was a subcontractor. And so when I was 13 years old, we ended up moving to Chesterfield. And man, you're talking about a culture shock. I mean, where I grew up, I grew up in City Point and in Hopewell. And I'm not gonna lie to you, brother, it was one white family in my whole neighborhood, one white family. So when I moved to Chesterfield at 13, we literally lived in a house that was probably 3 times as much as the house that I was living in when I lived in the hood. So it was a whole different dynamic. We lived in a suburb called Mineola, very beautiful homes. It was a culture shock. I mean, I went from living in a neighborhood where it was predominantly black to a predominantly white neighborhood. You know what I mean? And learned so much. And I mean, I thank God every day because the fact that I was able to be exposed to 2 completely different lifestyles, it molded me to who I am today.
That's fantastic. Maris, do you have any other questions before I continue?
So I wanted to get back to, in regards to the appreciation part of your father. When you finally learned to appreciate him, right? Walk us through that. Like, did you have the opportunity to actually tell him that you appreciated him, or was it too late?
I did get the opportunity, brother. I appreciate you. I appreciate you asking. That's a great question. So when I was, because it was right before I had my daughter, I was around 20 years old. That's when me and my dad started to have a relationship with each other. Right before my daughter was born, right? Because my wife, she was pregnant when I was 20 years old. My daughter ended up coming after I was 21 years old. So during that period, for a brief period of time, a couple months, me and my dad did have a relationship. He was dying. He had cancer, and it was so bad, man, to where, and I lost my grandfather to cancer, my dad, and I lost my mom to cancer. And I'm not gonna lie, my dad, he looked like an absolute skeleton before he passed away. Like it took everything from him, and it was hard to see him like that. So he ended up calling me and my sister because, like I was telling you before we got on air, I grew up, it was me, my brother, and my sister. Me and my brother have the same mom and dad. My brother, he has a different dad. So he's like my half brother. We got the same mom, but we got a different dad. Okay. So my dad has me, my sister, and then he has two sons of his own that he had. He ended up getting married and got two other sons. Right. So anyway, he called all of us. He called all four of his children over because he knew he was passing. He had a life insurance policy out and he wanted to kind of make things right. Okay. So he had a private conversation with me and he said, look, son, I'm dying. I know you could tell, he said, but I'm trying to leave you with a little piece of something. I know I wasn't there for you, your entire life. And there's reasons behind that. I'm not going to make any excuses. And he said, but I definitely want to try to right some of my wrongs. And he said, I'm trying to leave you with something. And I just want to spend, the time that I have left with you. And I mean, immediately, I was, man, I forgive you. I don't even care, because this is, it is crazy because when someone is on their deathbed or someone is about to cross over, you don't care about anything that, I didn't care about nothing that my dad did or didn't do for me in that moment. Because I would trade everything just to have a relationship with him right then and there. You understand what I mean? That's all that mattered in that moment was, me being able to spend the little amount of time that I have with him. And that's exactly what we did. And I was able to express to him how I felt. I told him like the trauma that came from me being outside. Like I used to remember, I used to be outside and he would tell me, son, I'm gonna come get you this weekend or whatever. And I'd be like, all right, dad, I'm gonna wait for you, whatever. I'm on the porch, got my bag packed, waiting for him. It gets dark. Mom, like, come on, son, come in the house. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, no, he's coming this time, I promise. I went through that. I went through that a lot, and as a young boy, man, that really changes who you are. You know what I mean? It really does. So I had a lot of trust issues, had a lot of trauma from that. And I expressed that with him. And, he apologized. And after he passed, that's really when I was like, you know what, Dad, I forgive you. I never told him face to face that I forgave him. In my heart, I knew I did. But it was after he passed is when I said it out loud. Like, you know what, man? Like, I get it. It's hard. And I forgive you.
For those who may hold some type of anger, right? Your answer was beautiful because it kind of showed them like you need to forgive because, like you said, the clock is ticking.
It is.
All right.
Yeah, forgiveness, man. Maris knows the story by now, but I've already mentioned my dad in this episode, but it's very relevant because I had a similar experience, but as an adult, so not as a child. So my dad was around pretty much from birth until about 18, 19 or so. Then he had a falling out with my mother. and then he basically checked out. So imagine, becoming an adult, basically, out in the world. I was in college doing whatever, and not having that male figure to ask questions, or, go fishing with, or, experience, just that growth, that basically crossing over to the next step in your life, with that masculine figure. And that I harbored a lot of resentment, man. And I'm 41 years old, man, and I literally just let go of that resentment, man. I've been battling with it for years, throughout my 20s, throughout my 30s, not speaking to him, speaking to him. And man, it's just so refreshing to hear you say that you had a similar experience, except for, he was in and out in your youth, and you came to make peace with it all. And that's admirable, man. Did your mom ever bash him, or did she make comparisons to you two, like when you were growing up?
Yeah. We had a lot of that. And I believe it was because hurt people hurt people. My mom grew up very toxic household. My grandfather was, he wasn't, from what I hear, he wasn't a good dude. You know what I mean? I don't want to back. I personally, I pause because I'm not the type of person to bash, my ancestors or anything like that. Because like I said before, we don't know the full story, right? Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't want to do that, because I wouldn't want anybody to do that to me unless they knew, everything about me, or got a full picture of who I was and my character. But from the stories that I heard, my grandfather, wasn't the best, right? Especially when it came to raising his girls, right? So my mother ran away when she was younger, trying to go seek love from a guy, because she never got it from her dad. Typical story. We hear that a lot, I think, now, lately or whatever. But yeah, so my mother she did that a lot. Every time I would make her upset, you look just like him and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I know. And they don't really understand what that does to a young man, especially when you want to be with your dad, he's not there. It's a very confusing energy. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, my mom was like, your dad is a monster and stuff like that. But it's like, the little time that I did spend with him, it was like, I looked up to him. He's my dad. You know what I mean? So that, and I think that's a very, very tough dynamic, right? When you really want to be with somebody, but then that your mom don't want you to be around him. So a lot of I didn't figure out until later that, my mom stopped a lot of things that he was trying to do for me, right? So I had a lot of resentment, not only for my dad, but for my mom as well. When I figured out a lot of the stories and a lot of things that she was doing kind of behind my back. But ultimately, I realized that they both were trying to protect me. Right. And I think it's so important that I say that here, because I'm going to give you guys a story. So when I was 15 years old, right, I went through a time period, kind of like I was trying to find myself. We were moving a lot. Even when we moved to Chesterfield, we would move every year. I went to 3 different high schools. I went to 3 different middle schools. I went to 4 different elementary schools. So we moved a lot. People used to think we were a military family, right? Which my grandfather was in the military. My dad was in the military. You know what I mean? We were a military family, but that wasn't the reason why we were moving so much. You understand what I'm saying? We were moving so much just because that's just how my mom and my stepdad were. You know what I mean? Every time he'd get a new job or something would happen, we would just up and leave, and like it was nothing, right? So I didn't keep friends very long. But yeah, I remember when I was 15, I got tired of all the moving. When you're 15 years old, can't nobody tell you nothing. You think you know everything, and the world is so unfair. And mom, you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm poking my chest out at my stepdad. I don't. You're not my real dad. Going through all of that stuff, man. And so I remember one time, man, my mom, she was done with it. You know, she was like, you know what? I'm tired of your shit. She said, you think you're grown? Get out. And for me, I'm like, I didn't even know that was an option. You know what I mean? I'm like, get out and go where? So she was like, you know, you always wanted to be with your dad. How about you call him? Because I'm done. You know what? Okay, cool. That's fine. You know, I think I'm the man now anyway. I'm good. I can go back to the hood. I'm fine. Right? Mind you, for 2.5 years, we was living good. We was living great. Christmas was amazing. So I was spoiled for those 2.5 years, and I was a spoiled little brat, and I didn't know what I had. So I said, you know what? Cool. You know, I called my sister. My sister lived 10 minutes down the road from my dad. I called my sister, and my sister at the time, she had 6 kids. My sister now has 7 kids. She has 6 kids in her house. And so I called my sister and I said, you know what? I said, mom kicked me out or whatever. You know, I'm about to come stay with you if you don't mind. Really, I want to come live with dad. You know, she's like, you sure about that? And I should have known because she kept asking me, was I okay? And am I sure? I'm like, yeah, I mean, if it's okay with you, yeah. She was like, all right, matter of fact, I'm gonna call your dad. I'm gonna see if he can come get you. If he can't, me and my husband will come get you. And she said that we can go from there. Just have your stuff packed. So my sister ended up coming to get me. And when I got there, my dad was at the house, right? I'm chopping it up with my dad. You know, they're in the house smoking weed, doing what they do, right? And and I told my dad, I said, man, you know what, Dad, I want to come live with you. He was like, son, are you sure? I was like, man, yes. Why y'all keep asking me? What is up with y'all, man? Like, yes, I want to come live with you. He was like, all right. He was like, you know what? I got some things to do. I'm gonna come back tonight. I'm gonna come get you, and we will get you set up at the house. I'm like, all right, cool.
So you hype. So you hype at this point.
Right. I'm about to be with my dad. My dad, cool. You know, he doing all this stuff, and man, listen to me. I got to my dad. My dad lives, and his house is still on Crater Road to this day. The house that he owned is on Crater Road in Petersburg, in the heart of the hood. And when I got to his house, there was no running water. He had 6 people living with him. He had no room for me. He told me I had to make a pallet on the floor. Imagine these hardwood floors. He told me I had to make a pallet on the floor. He walked me through how I had to boil my water to be able to take a shower. The house had roaches. There was one TV in the living room. I'm like, I get there and I'm just like, this is going to be impossible for me. Right? Because when we moved to Chesterfield, man, we had it all. You know, I was used to a certain standard. And even when we didn't live in Chester, when I was living in Hopewell, people used to call us hood rich because we had everything. Yes, we lived in a small home, but we had everything. Okay. I can say this, I rarely went without. Yes, there was some days where we was on a ramen noodle diet. I remember it felt like a year straight. Right, yeah, ramen noodles with eggs. I was like, man, if I see another pack of ramen noodles, right? But all in all, my mom did a very good job. Even before she, married my stepdad, she did a very good job trying to provide for us. And I had a certain standard of living. When I finally moved out there to my dad, that's when it clicked to me. I was like, wow, this is the reason why my dad didn't want me to be with him, because he knew that I deserved better than this. This was the big secret that my mom knew, my dad knew, and my sister knew. And man, listen, I called my sister within 30 minutes of being there and said, you gotta come pick me up. I can't do this. I can't live like this. This is impossible. I can't do this. And so that's when everything came back full circle. I ended up, I cried to my mom. I apologized. I said, Mom, I get it. I understand why you kept me away from that. And I understand why my dad, didn't want me to be around, because my dad was on crack cocaine. My dad's house was a crack house. That's why the house looked like that. I didn't know that. I had no idea. I didn't know. I was blind to the fact. And they kept that away from me, and for good reason. So that's the reason why I forgave my dad, because he knew that he wasn't going to be able to give me the life that I deserved as a young man. And so
Wow. So he was a career drug user.
he was. And a con artist. He was.
And a con man.
He was.
Hustler, if you will.
Hustler. Yes, sir.
Interesting. And that stemmed, you think, from his upbringing? I think you mentioned your mom's parents not giving her the best experience, but what about his parents? What do you know about his parents?
I know very little, Terrell, about his parents and his side of my family. My mom always sheltered me from that. You know, she never really shared too much about that side of my family. You know, I knew a couple cousins and stuff like that lived in Davesville in Hopewell, but for the most part, you know, I think I seen my grandmother on his side one time, and it was in a nursing home when I was very young. You know, I have faint memories of that. But as far as his dad, never met him. I don't know too much. You know, I don't know much of anything. Now that you ask me, I don't know much of anything about his side of the family. And I couldn't tell you how my dad grew up. I couldn't.
Yeah, you can only make deductions from what you saw, right?
Yeah.
That it probably wasn't good. I mean, you know, people don't become career drug addicts and con men, you know, for no reason. There's some trauma there that he must have faced, maybe some abandonment, maybe, you know, lack of guidance, lack of mentorship, you know, and that's what we're here for. We're here to, you know, as far as manifest change, to you know, help reach some people who, you know, maybe living in a house where they feel abandoned or they don't have direction too. So that he probably, you know, fell into that category.
Yeah. I assume the same.
Which is crazy, man. But I want to talk about this theme of protection, right? You mentioned that a couple times, like your mom was trying to protect you, your dad was trying to protect you. How much of this protecting do you feel like you do now with your kids? You know, how much do you let your kids get it out the mud, or are you also protecting them right now from something?
Wow, you guys got, man, listen, y'all got the good questions, man, for real. So, wow, I think that is a multi-layered question, right? So, as far as the dynamic is here in my household is, so I have 4 children. My oldest is 11 years old. She's my warrior, right? She's like the rock. And I say that because my daughter has been through so much in such a short period of time, right? Because she was super close to my wife's dad, and he ended up passing in 2017, right? My daughter was, he died in 2018. My daughter was 3 years old when he passed. And she loved that man to death. So she experienced that, and he died of a heart attack. I don't know. We literally found him. Her sister found him in the room. He had the door locked. They all lived together. And she found him literally trying to get dressed. Like his pants was down. He was in the room trying to get dressed, and they said he had a heart attack. Like he got out the shower, was trying to get himself together, and he had a heart attack right there. Boom. Found him face down, and he was gone. And that was very, very traumatic. I feel like his loss shook up like her family, like real bad, because me and my wife, we met in 2011. We were both in 10th grade in high school, right? I was 16 years old. She was 15 years old. And we were like best friends. We were inseparable. And we've been together this whole time. It's going on 15 years. July 5th will be 15 years that we were together. And her dad was my father figure, right? When I was 17 years old, I remember having a conversation with him, and we clicked because of our faith. We were both, you know, believers in the Most High, and we used to talk Bible scriptures and stuff like that. And we ended up getting real close. And he was he's what you call a man's man. Like, he was in the military. He didn't take no shit. You know what I mean? He raised my wife and her two sisters with her mom, and he did an amazing job with them, right? But he was real old school. And so when I was 17 years old, I used to always want to be up under him, right? He was my first mentor, right? And he taught me what it was to be a man. You understand? And so I got a lot of traits and stuff from him, and a lot of the things that he had taught me. So I think now with the dynamic that we have now in the house is I'm definitely protective over my children, in the sense of I don't let my children go out the house a lot. Like how we were growing up, we used to go outside, run the neighborhood. Man, I'd be indifferent. Man, I'd be 10 miles away from the house as long as I'm in before the street lights came on. You know, it's way different now. I don't really let my kids go out into the neighborhood much. I'm gonna be honest with you. We do a lot of structured activities. All of my kids are in some type of sport. And I think that we do live in different times now than what it was when we were growing up. You know what I mean? In the early 2000s or whatnot. But I definitely protect my kids because of a lot of the things that I went through in my childhood, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's supernatural, right?
Yeah.
Because would you consider what you went through traumatic?
I would consider what I went through traumatic, and to finish the story about my daughter, you know, after she had to experience you know, her papa passed, and then my mother ended up passing about three and a half years ago, and her and my mother was super close, so she ended up losing her as well. And then during COVID, we ended up losing our home, so we ended up having to move in with her parents, and it was a lot. It was a lot. So my daughter, you know, was with us through all of that. You know what I mean? So that's why I say she's definitely the warrior, and she has a lot of emotional resilience that I see in her now, you know, because of all the things that she went through. So, yeah.
So real quick. So you mentioned how we grew up back in the day, right? And
Yes, sir.
You know, obviously me and Terrell, we're a little bit older than you, right? So I'm an 80s baby. So
not by too much, man. Not by
too much, but
Slightly.
by enough. By enough.
Slightly older.
So my question for you is this. Now you say your daughter's, you know, she's resilient, warrior, stuff like that. And you mentioned her having lost a grandfather, grandmother, you know, experiencing you guys losing your home.
Mm-hmm.
How did you share conversations with her, like explaining things to her, encouraging words and things like that? Like, was those conversations had, or was it similar to when I was coming up, like staying in a child's place?
Everything's hush hush growing up. Yeah, that's how we were growing up, was the hush hush culture. Yeah, absolutely, Brother Maris. Yeah. So I'm very transparent and open with my children because of everything being so hush hush. You know, a lot of stuff going on, you know, within the family or whatnot. So my guy, what's up, Athens?
My mom want to be on TV.
There we go, man. Hey, he crashing the pod.
Hey, the good news is you won't see him because I wasn't speaking. So
come on,
but
man.
Yeah, he just popped on up.
I love it, man. That's our future right there. But yeah, so to answer your question, yes, every time we dealt with something traumatic, a loss in the family or whatnot, very open with my children early and very raw as well. Like I told my daughter, even when she was 3 years old, I said, yes, Papa's not here with us anymore. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to see him, but just know that he loves you and he'll never leave you. You know, he's always right here in your heart, you know. And then when she got older, you know, even more you know, because she can handle it a little bit more.
Right.
Told, you know, your grandma was in pain. She had stomach cancer, right? She's no longer in pain. Now I can explain it to her in that way so she can kind of understand, like, you know, death isn't the end. It's just, you know, she's crossing over. She's with the Most High. She's with the Most High. And we all would be with the Most High, you know, and this life is but a blink, you know. So, you know, explaining that to her, making sure that she's not afraid of death, you know, and making sure that she knows it's evolution. You know, things come and they go. You know, that's just how it is. That's just how this life is. So very transparent with her. Let her know, you know, it is okay to be upset. It's okay to be sad, but you got to continue to live your life. And that's what your grandparents would have wanted you to do.
Right.
You know what I mean? I tell her all the time, like, she tells me, I miss Papa. I miss my grandma. But I tell her, like, well, listen, you know, you know that they love you so much, and you know that they would want you to be the best person that you could be. Right. So why don't we do that? Why don't we, you know, we honor their memory by doing what we know that they wanted us to do. Right. You know, and just try to explain it to them in that way. So yeah, right. Absolutely.
Right. No, and I was curious, right? Because like I said, when we were growing up, you had to, you know, stay in the child's place. And as time has progressed, you see the effects of that. Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of people that they don't have the ability to express their feelings because they never had the opportunity to express. You know, so having that conversation early and having that opportunity to speak, it's a game changer.
Yep. Absolutely. And I believe that you know, emotional intelligence is a skill, right? It's a skill that needs to be developed. And Terrell knows this. That's literally one of the pillars that we touch on at Kid Strong. You know, we have a whole milestone about emotional intelligence,
right?
And how to regulate your emotions, right? Because since we're talking about emotions, you know, I tell people all the time, like, emotions are indicators, it's not dictators, right? So your emotions, say you're happy, sad, or what have you, those are only indicators. You do not have to react off of your emotions. And we know, especially in our community, in the Black community, we got a lot of people who react. You know, we see it all the time, especially on social media. You know, somebody cut you off in traffic, you cussing them out and ready to run them off the road. You know, we need to learn, especially as men and as Black men, to have that self-control and to have that emotional awareness to know, hey, listen, I do not have to make any decisions right now, right? I need to operate off of a place of logic and not emotion. I think that's very important.
It's funny you mentioned that, because earlier today I was reading Solomon, and all throughout that book, there's parables and things like that speak on, you know, being hesitant to speak with aggression and things of that nature. So funny that you mentioned that.
No, man, that's amazing. It's amazing.
You know, it's also great and poignant that you're bringing up emotions, because that's actually one of the keys to our discussion, right? Emotions, boundaries, and respect. And so we just talked about this. You're a younger guy. Do you want to share your age on camera?
Yeah, absolutely. With that? 31. Yeah. I'll be 32 September 23rd.
He's a baby.
31.
Man, I feel like I lived 100 lives, brother. I promise.
Yes. And I want to touch on that just for a second, man. I have a couple questions. Two-part question. First question: how difficult is it to handle your emotions as a younger parent of 4, and they're all various ages? And how has your upbringing given you the parenting edge over your peers?
Great questions. So the first part, now, as far as far as my dynamic here at home and raising 4 children, it's not easy. And I'll tell anybody this. It is the hardest thing I ever had to do, and it's not even close, right? Because I have 4 humans that I'm responsible for, right? That I'm responsible for. They look up to me and their mother, right? But especially me, being the father of the household. They look at me for all the decisions, right? And so when you're put in that position, it's kind of like, you know, sink or swim. It's like either you're going to step up to the plate and you're going to realize that, hey, listen, you have 4 humans that are looking at you, and every single move that you make, they are going to want to make themselves. Because a lot of people, you know, growing up, my mom used to always tell me, like, do as I say, not as I do. That's not how this works, though. That way of thinking to me has always been flawed, because listen, my kids they care about what I say, but they care way more about what I do. Because if I tell my kids not to do something, if I say, hey, look, I want y'all to stop eating hot Cheetos because it has red dye in it, and this is the reason why, because red dye is this, that, and the third. If they see me eating hot Cheetos, they don't care about nothing that I said. They know, well, Dad, you eat hot Cheetos, I'm eating hot Cheetos.
Right.
It's no question, right? So I think it's very important for us to, first of all, we need to be very aware of what our children see us doing, right? I think that's step one. And I wish I had my kids here today, because I take pride in what I'm about to say. I told my wife before we even, you know, got serious, I said, if we were to ever have kids, one thing that I would not allow is for us to argue in front of our kids. I don't care what the situation is. I would never, ever allow my children to see me call you out your name, and us spew hatred towards each other. You know, none of that. And I will say, to this day, my children have not seen me and their mother ever argue any type of argument. Yes, we've raised our voice. Yes, I said, you know what? I'm out of here. I need to take a break. I need to go for a walk. But that's it. It ends there. We've never talked about personal stuff in front of our children. We've never had any arguments in front of the children. And I tell you this, I think that is so very important, because growing up, my mom and stepdad did the opposite. They used to rope us into their arguments. And I feel like that is so wrong. You know, they used to have a argument. It used to end my brother and my stepdad fist fighting. It used to get to the point where they would be fist fighting each other in the house. It was very, very toxic. You know what I mean? So I think it's super important for us to have the emotional maturity, because in that moment, when you get mad at your spouse or you get mad at someone, your immediate knee-jerk reaction is to get back at them, right? It's, you made me feel some type of way, so I got to make you feel worse. You said something hateful about me, I got to get you, you know what I mean? I got to go even lower, you know what I mean, to make you feel how I felt. I learned at a very young age, and I promise you, I can't give myself no credit. It got to be from the grace of the Most High. It has to be. It has to be that it doesn't matter what we go through. We will not do this in front of the children. I never want my children to grow up in a household where they're hearing me and their mama call each other out our name. We're fighting and pushing each other, and never. I don't tolerate none of that, and I never will. So I believe that, you know, that is the foundation to our relationship and the structure that we have here. So with that being said, I don't tolerate my children arguing with each other. I tell them all the time. I say, listen, if y'all have a disagreement with each other, you guys can talk about it. If you hurt one another, you guys can have a conversation about it. And if you can't do so, then come get me a mom, right? Then come get me a mom. But try to handle that, you know, amongst each other. You don't always have to come tell me every single thing that goes on, right? Because I tell people, you can't control how you feel initially, but you can control how you react to a situation, and that goes with everything in life. So say, for instance, I'm driving in a car. Let's use the traffic analogy. Let's say that I'm driving in a car and somebody cuts me off and we get into a car accident. I can't control the fact that somebody got into my lane and hit me. That's out of my control, right? But I can control what I do after, right? So I could, man, you did this, that, and the third, and get all worked up or whatever. Or I can know, hey, look, at the end of the day, things happen. I don't know what that person could have been rushing for. Who knows? So I love to, in the moment, I love to always bring myself back to, like, you know what? This person can be, going through whatever. Who knows? He could be having a bad day. They could be trying to rush to get to the hospital. We don't know, right? So in that moment, it's like, look, call the police, get the insurance, get it taken care of. It's not even really that big of a deal. This type of stuff happens, right? To me, that's emotional maturity. And that's what I try to instill into my kids on a day-to-day basis. You cannot control everything that happens to you, but you can control how you react to every single situation, right? Because that is your responsibility.
Man, listen, you just wrapped up the entire thesis of this episode in one story, in one soliloquy, if you will. You touched on emotional intelligence, boundaries, and respect just now. So let's rewind the tape a little bit. So you said, do as I say, not as I do is a toxic attachment style. I completely agree with that. I think you need to model the behaviors that you want your kids to emulate.
Yes.
Now, the die example is a crazy example because we're die free in our household. And I love me some Cheetos, bro. I love me some Kool-Aid, you know what I'm saying? Or, whatever else comes with dyes, all, M&Ms, but we don't let the kids eat them. I mean, very rarely. And so I have to work on that, because I do agree that it should be as a, like, do as I do and as I say.
Yes.
But another thing you touched on is the boundaries and respect, the boundaries that you have with your wife based on your upbringing and how you watched your mom and your stepdad pretty much, go toe to toe in front of you guys, dragging you into conversations, and how crazy that must have been.
Yeah.
I can agree wholeheartedly when you say not to argue in front of the kids. The last thing you want to do is to make your kids question their security and their safety, right? So imagine what that does to a kid. The two people that you look to for safety and security are battling it out, putting hands on each other, in each other's faces. Kids must be terrified. You must have been terrified when that was happening. And so to take it a step further, I tell this to everybody, any, young couple, anybody who will listen, older couples, if you break that line of respect with your spouse, either you do something crazy or she does something crazy, says something crazy, and you no longer respect your partner, you no longer have a relationship, a workable relationship.
Correct.
Because respect is one of those things that's really, really hard to earn. But when you earn it, it really sets you apart, because it's hard to really find somebody that you respect. And when that's broken, man, when that's broken, like I know from firsthand experience, like I broke that with my ex-wife and there was no coming back. I knew it was only a matter of time, that we would end because that respect was broken. We had a little physical altercation. And when I was younger, I used to say crazy things, B word this, you ain't S word that, all kinds of stuff that I really shouldn't have said. And I know that she lost respect for me and I lost respect for her, and it was over. And so that's probably the biggest piece of advice I could give any new couple or old couple. Literally guard your words, guard your actions. The kids are watching, and if you break that, you're going to really have a hard time to have any kind of longevity in any kind of relationship, whether even friendship, relationship. It's tough. So love what you said there, and also finally defend your spouse in front of your kids, right? Whether it's a family member that's trying to say something crazy, whether it's the kid trying to say something crazy to the mom or whatever, no matter what you do, defend your spouse in front of to everyone. So that's just a general rule that you have as the man of the house or as a husband. And I'm off my soapbox now.
I love that, brother.
Yeah.
I love, man, that was incredible advice. Absolutely. Yeah. Brother Maris, do you have anything that you want to add, brother?
Nah, man, Terrell said everything.
I didn't mean to take all the air out of the doggone situation.
No, and it was incredible. But to piggyback on something that Brother Terrell did say, though, is when we speak about, the family dynamic I had and the fights that my mom and my stepdad had, I believe that it played a huge role in shaping my identity. And what I mean by that is, growing up, I used to be very emotionally reserved, right? Because that security in my house was broken. It was I felt like I couldn't go to my mom for anything. And just to give you a little bit of background on my mother, like I said, my mother had her struggles and stuff. My mother was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, manic depression. So, and to all my Geminis out there, I love y'all. But my mama was also a Gemini too. So I was like, man, that's a cool. You talking about a dynamic. So my mother had.
I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming because Maris is in fact a Gemini.
Listen, Coach Terry is my brother. I love him. He is literally my brother, and he is a Gemini. And he's the one who makes me think differently about Geminis. And my daughter's one as well. So I love my fellow Geminis. Don't give me no hate for that. But
shout out to Coach Terry.
Yeah, shout out to Coach Terry for sure. He's the man. But yeah, so my mother did have these different. I say that because she definitely had these different personalities, like seriously, and it was bad. And because of that, my brother got diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Very troubled, very, very troubled. A lot of times it was just me and my brother, and just to give you a picture, when my brother was 11 years old, he put alcohol on my stomach and it lit me on fire. And that was his first time ever getting arrested. When my brother was 11 years old, he got arrested and went to juvie for lighting me on fire. And from then on, my brother ended up getting 16 assault charges. So my brother was a very troubled kid. His dad died before he was born in a chemical fire. And so he never had a chance. He didn't. His dad, he didn't even have opportunity to meet his dad, right? And so my brother he had the pressure of, because he's 5 years older than me, he had the pressure of not having any example of a father and trying to almost raise me, because I was little brother, and my mom worked so much before my stepdad came in the picture. And when my stepdad came, he worked even more than my mom did. And he was a whole different culture, man. He's from Mexico. It was just a whole different dynamic. He was never really a father figure to me and my brother, at all. You know what I mean? And so, my brother, I looked up to him for everything. But my brother is very troubled, man. And my brother's in federal penitentiary right now doing a 10-year bid. He's real messed up, man. Real messed up. It's a lot of things that went on, a lot of demonic things that went on, in my house that I'm willing to share with you guys off here or whatever. But it's a lot there, So, but anyway, all of those things, right? really shaped who I was. Okay. And it made me a people pleaser. And I realized very early on that I was the type of guy that would try to make people laugh, and I would try to mitigate a lot of the stuff that was going on in the house. So, like, say for instance, because it was like a ticking time bomb. So if my brother and my stepdad started to get into it, or my mom and them started to get into it, I would try to lighten the mood. Hey guys, you know what I'm saying? Hey, let's do this. Or, you know, I try to make a joke and try to get everybody's mind off, because I can feel the energy about to turn sour. So I kind of like built this identity of, you know, being a comedian and being a people pleaser, right? I didn't realize until about a couple of years ago that, you know, being a people pleaser, it ain't it, you know, because I felt like I lost who I was as a person. It was so hard for me to find out who Jamie is, because I used to have to, you know, put on all these different faces just to be able to protect myself, right? I felt like it was out of survival, because that's how I grew up. You know what I mean? I grew up in that household, and it was like walking on eggshells. So it really molded me into a person who was a people pleaser. I used to go above and beyond for everybody. I would put myself last all the time. You know, I would move mountains for other people, but when it came to my own well-being, you know, I would neglect myself. And it wasn't until my late 20s where I realized, like, wow, you know, saying no doesn't mean I'm selfish. You know what I mean? Like, I can say no, you know, and go on about my day and do what it is that I need to do for myself without feeling like, you know, a bad person or a bad guy. You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't know if you guys want to kind of touch on that a little bit, or if you guys had experience with being a people pleaser or people that's like that. But that was my identity for a very long time, fellas. A very long time.
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I could definitely relate to what you're saying, especially as far as being inside the toxic household, because everything that you described as far as your reasoning for not arguing in front of your kids, and Terrell mentioned, it was totally opposite as a child in my household. You know, like I told you prior to the show, my siblings are, you know, a lot older than me. You know, my parents are from the South. My father, you know, God bless the dead, he had that old fashioned Southern mentality. You know, I go to work, I provide, you know, but my house is my kingdom, you know. And my mother was, from my perspective, you know, like a servant, you know, bring him his meals, things like that. And you know, that affected me. You know, that really affected me, because I saw my mother, and I didn't realize this until I got older. But I love my mother, right? Would never say anything other than that. But it was a less than factor to me, right? My respect for women, you know, him calling her out of her name, him blatantly cheating on her, you know, her being accepted of all of that, you know, that played a role in when I started dating, when I started interacting with women. And you don't realize that until you get older. And then you're like, oh, that's why I do this, or that's why I do that, you know? So, like I said, man, I commend you, and I commend Terrell for, you know, the things that you guys do. But
Thanks.
it doesn't mean because you grow up in that environment, right, that you have to stay that way. I mean,
Yeah,
because
bro.
right, because it's all about growth. It's all about, there has to be a time where you say, this isn't acceptable. You know, I can no longer operate like this, and I can no longer say, because, oh, I grew up in this environment, or I was exposed to this, or such and such taught me this, that this is why I'm still operating like that. You know,
I love that. I love that. You know what, brother? I love that because I used to tell people all the time, like, once you have the realization of that, you can no longer use it as an excuse.
right,
Once you come to the mental realization, oh, the reason why I did this is because of my upbringing, because it has no power over you no more,
right,
unless you want it to.
right.
Exactly. A lot of people kind of lean on that.
Yeah.
They lean on a thing or things that happened to them in their past, and they allow it to prevail in their current identity. You know, they allow it to persist and become a symptom, not a symptom, a cause. Excuse me, a cause of their behavior, and it's unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable. I mean, yes, it is a fact that if you go through traumatic experience, it is going to affect you, right, in some way. Also, a fact, you don't have to let it become your identity. You know, you can rise above it, right? And so I'm curious, Jamie, super curious, because I've had tendencies of being a people pleaser in my past, and I think for me it was more so I had to be a chameleon because I had a culture shock too, just like you, Jamie. Like, I grew up in a relatively stable community of majority white and black. It was kind of a mixture, but there were no other races or anything like that when I was growing up. And then I chose to go to a college in rural Pennsylvania, about 50 miles west of Philadelphia, right, stone's throw from the Big Apple. Basically, large Catholic Jewish people and Catholic people, basically all white, and that was a complete culture shock for me because I was used to like more of a mixture. Okay, I'm gonna get to my point. When I was there, like, I literally had to adapt to the fact that there was not many people around that looked like me, so I had to assimilate. I had to coddle people's emotions. I had to be not as, I guess, aggressive. I had to be like more of a shadow of myself so that I could fit in. So I didn't like scare people, like, because I was like way bigger, at that time. So I'm curious though, Jamie, what was there like that? What was that one thing that happened that really made you realize that, like, I literally just can't do this anymore? Like, I want to know, like, if you're able to share, like, what happened to make you realize that this can't happen.
I realized it was very recently, like within the last couple of years. Like I said, it was probably after my mother passed. I was 27. I was about to be 28. She died 2 days after her birthday. And it was super traumatic because I was just with my mother. And I got a call saying that she fell down the stairs. And they had got her. They took her to the hospital. And when I got to the hospital, she was like nonverbal, And so I'm asking the doctor, like, like, what happened? Like, did she hit her head? Like, why is she's kind of like out of it? And they told me, like, yeah, she's on, like, she's sedated very heavily. You know what I mean? She's on heavy medication and stuff like that. And then I had this nurse. She came in and she was like, is Miss Johnson your mother? I was like, yes, I'm her son or whatever. And she wanted to speak with me. So we went into a room and she had a conversation with me. And she basically told me, your mother's dying of cancer, and unbeknownst to me, I had absolutely no idea. So basically my mom got diagnosed with cancer 4 months before she passed. From my knowledge, it was like 4 months before she passed. And she didn't want to tell anybody. She didn't tell anybody. Yeah. And So, because she didn't want to worry anybody, or I really don't know why she didn't tell anybody. I never got the chance to ask her. But yeah, so there she was, lying in the hospital bed at Chippenham Hospital, and they told me like she had cancer, and it was like I couldn't believe it, man. You know what I mean? I couldn't believe it. Like I said, a couple days prior to that, I was with my mom. I remember she had sent me to the store. She wanted a Sprite and some cookies, and I remember I went to the store and I dropped it off at her house. I seen her, gave her a hug, and I went on about my business. But yeah, man, they said she had stomach cancer. That it was, I believe they said it started in her kidneys, then it went to like her pancreas, and it was spread. It was all over. So anyway, so in that moment, that's when I realized, like, man, like I know life is short. I've went through a lot of sudden deaths, but this was different. This one was totally different, right? Because my mom was like, I felt like the only connection I had left. You know what I mean? Because my brother was locked up, and my sister is doing her thing. We don't really speak much, and my dad had passed. So I was like, man, my mom was like the Rock too, So when that happened, and when my mom passed, she had no insurance, no life insurance, no nothing, and I was her beneficiary. So everything, I had to pay for everything, and it was very, very tough. Very tough because it was very sudden, and it was right after COVID. It was right after I lost everything. So, I literally had just lost my house, and I was living with my wife's my wife's mom at the time. It was just to give y'all a overview. She lived in a townhouse. She still lives in the same townhouse. 3 bedroom, 1.5 bath townhouse. It was me. It was my wife. It was Zaire. Yes. 3 of my children at the time, because Laura wasn't born yet. Her mother, her sister, her sister's kid, one of her sister's children, her other sister. Her other sister has a child as well. She got 2 of them now, and her aunt, her 2 kids. It was like 12 of us. It's like 12 of us in the 3 bedroom. And so, very, very tough time. I felt like less of a man. I was going through an identity crisis, and I had to bury my mother and put on a funeral, a wake. I had to do all this stuff. I was in charge of everything. So I was so busy trying to be strong for the whole family and everybody that was, that loved and was mourning my mom. I never had the time to grieve. I was too busy. I had to raise money for the funeral. I had nothing. Everything was on me. Like, it was literally in my name. I had to if anybody, man, I tell you, if anybody ever was in charge of, having to have a funeral, I tell you, man, it would change your life. It would literally change your life. The responsibility and the pressure that you feel, and you only have a week and a half, 2 weeks max, right? Because the body, they can only have the body out for so long. So you're so pressed for time. You have all these different things that you have to do, and you're meeting all these people, and you have to revisit the fact that, your mom died. You got to keep telling people, like, oh my God, I feel so bad for your loss. And you're being revisited the whole time of of everything that happened. You have to talk about it constantly. You know what I mean? And everybody's looking at me. So I had to be this strong person, right? I had to be unshakable, right? And I did that. But as soon as that was over with, man, I cut off my family, like my mom's side of the family. I cut them off. During that time, they got into a dispute. It was nasty, man. Like, my aunts and them, they made the situation about them. They brought up some stuff that happened when my grandmother passed, when my uncle passed, and a money situation popped up. And me, I'm just trying to bury my mother, right? I'm trying to honor my mother and do the right thing. And I had my family having all these disputes, and they were arguing, and one side of the family's calling me saying we should do it this way, and the other side saying this. So, that's when I realized I can no longer be a people pleaser. I have to do what I feel in my heart is best, and people are just going to have to live with the decision. It's just point blank, period. Right? So what I did was I had to make clear expectations, and I had to tell people, no, we're not doing this. And it was so hard for me to do that because I'm so used to, what, man, we can make that work. You know what? I'll get back to you we're not doing that. Nope. I'm not going in that direction. Because I used to think that, boundaries created distance. I used to always think that, if I tell somebody no, they're not going to want to be around me anymore. They're not going to want to be my friend anymore. They're not going to want to have a relationship with me if I tell them no. I didn't realize that setting boundaries actually is what creates trust. People trust you when you have boundaries. People don't respect the person who don't have boundaries. They don't respect you. And that's the reason why people will have you going to and fro, because they don't respect you. Right? So that's the time that I came to that realization, was when I had everybody looking at me and everybody was so opinionated about my mother's funeral, but wasn't, but it was on me. It was my decision to make. And I had to say, you know what? No, this is how we're doing it. This is what it's going to be. You either take it or leave it. And I realized that, you know what? It's a blessing when people show you their true colors when you tell them no. When you tell people no, that's when you see the real them. And then I realized, wow, so many people was in my life conditionally. Like, so many people was in my life because I kept saying yes. Because every time they would ask me for money, I would cash app them. Because every time they needed me to be there, I was there. But when I started to tell people no, so many people fell by the wayside. That's why now my circle is so small. I can count, the people that's in my life on one hand. It wasn't like that at first, right? Because I was such a people pleaser. So I hope that answers your original question.
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. Wow. Grief transformation, huh? So you just told a story on how grief essentially changed you. God, I can relate. I can relate, man. It's another form of trauma. I mean, it is trauma.
Yeah.
It's a trauma response, right? And so anybody that knows psychology, can confirm that what you're saying is true. And I'm not a psychologist, but it's happened to me. I struggled with showing emotion. I was very stoic, very serious, and I still can be, but I had trouble connecting to my sad side. I don't really know how to just explain it, but I never cried. Never cried. I mean, maybe if something hurt real bad, but cried from feeling like empathy towards someone. Never cried from feeling emotional distress. How about that? Until my divorce. Until my divorce. For those of you who don't know, I'm on my second marriage. I was married to my first wife for about 7 years, and I really gave it my all. I committed to her. I fought my family over her. That's a story for a different day. But it's the first person I ever really truly loved. And even though we fought like crazy, and I've already shared some things, about domestic violence and all that stuff, but it was not until I divorced my first wife that I was able to actually cry when I would see some sort of emotional stimuli. Like, for instance, I could watch a movie, or I'll give you a great example. America's Got Talent. You ever seen that? You ever seen that show?
Yeah.
America's Got Talent does a phenomenal job. And I'm like a guy that I love media. You know this about me. Maris knows this about me. I love creating stories. I love telling stories. I was a journalist in a past life. America's Got Talent does a phenomenal job of connecting with the audience's emotions. Okay. And so a lot of times, they tell stories of these people who get on there. And sometimes, I mean, it's really, really powerful, compelling stuff like Cody Lee. Have you guys ever heard of Cody Lee?
No.
Okay, so he's a guy that's got autism or something like that. He's high functioning autism. He can barely see. I don't know. He may be blind. Look this guy up. He plays the piano and he sings. But when I saw his story, man, and he went up there, he got a golden buzzer, because his story was so compelling. I actually cried. And I could go to a movie and see people expressing genuine emotion. I can watch people expressing genuine emotion, not even just sad emotions, but elation, can move me. That never happened before. That was a result of my grief transformation that I went through, and I'm so grateful for it because now I'm much more connected to folks. I'm much more connected to myself, and I'm very grateful that I went through that experience so that I could actually finally express some kind of emotion and feel things where I wasn't able to feel things before.
Wow, that's awesome. I got a question. Why do you think that those your ability to tap into those emotions was unlocked due to grief, though? Why do you believe that grief can be something? Because most people look at grief as being something super negative, right? They can't really see anything positive in grief. Explain to us why you feel that within that grief, through that grief, is what gave you the keys to be able to unlock this newfound empathy and emotional side.
I think that's a multifaceted answer, and I'm going to do my best to get there. I I really I was really locked in, growing up with with sports and things like that, and I wore a mask. I really leaned into my identity as an athlete. I really did my best to put on this facade that I was strong, and really, I was never exposed to really emotional people, to be quite honest with you, and so I always wanted to I guess show strength in multiple different ways, not only physically but mentally, emotionally. I wanted to convey strength because maybe I was a little insecure, about certain things. But I never experienced, trauma really in my life, like you have experienced a lot of people dying and stuff like that. I never really had that experience. So I never really had anything like super terrible happen to me as well. I lived a pretty comfortable life. I mean, my parents, for my first 18 years, I mean, they did a great job of keeping me safe. And, I never had to deal with drugs or anything. I really didn't dabble in alcohol or anything like that, until much later in life. And so I think it was a combination of living a very safe and secure life, never really experiencing anything that could bring out any kind of emotions like that in me. And I think, I don't know, maybe I was just holding a lot of stuff in too. Just keeping it all in, just trying to be this masculine, manly man persona. And yeah, I guess it just really shook me to my core because of the many, different things that happened throughout my first marriage, and really getting burned like real bad, like really deeply hurting as a result of being with that person. And then when it finally came to an end, it was a mixture of like being super happy and being super sad, and just literally having to go through another identity shift, after that happened. And so I think just really like going through some shit with her, and just having that just be gone and then be pretty much losing everything. Just finally, I'm just like, oh, you know what? I can freaking cry about this. You know, it's okay. I can cry about this because I'm really hurt. Like some bad things really just happened to me, and now I can feel feelings, I guess. I don't really know.
I get it. No,
That was a really, really long-winded way to say, like, I just really did not open myself up. I did not allow myself to cry because I had to be strong, you know, because I was insecure about certain things. And once the divorce happened, and you know, it unlocked a crazy amount of emotions for me. Yeah.
So you feel like you allowed yourself to finally feel emotions once it happened, because
I allow myself.
Yeah, because we suppress it for whatever reason, you know, multiple reasons. We suppress the emotions, and you finally allowed yourself to do so. Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. I'm so glad you spoke about, you know, you said being stoic, right? That is actually, it's crazy that you say that, because I do view myself, people might disagree, but I do view myself as being, you know, parts, you know, somewhat stoic. And I used to research stoicism, right? In my early 20s, I read Meditations, right, by Marcus Aurelius. And I read Seneca's papers, and I was really deep into stoicism myself. And I think like nowadays, it's crazy because like it's like duality. It's like I think a lot of guys in this day and age are too emotional. I believe our parents' generation,
We're not emotional enough.
Not emotional at all. Yeah, not enough, right? So it's like, you know, it's a balancing act, and it's really, you gotta meet in the middle. Because, and I say that because you have to have emotional awareness, especially I'm realizing this, and my daughters are helping me out a lot with this, right? Is I can't, like with my sons, I could be like, hey, look, I need you to lock in, go do this. With my baby girls, it's like, I can't talk to them like that. It just doesn't, they don't respond well to that. They'll shut down. You know what I mean? My sons can handle that all day long. My daughters, you know, they're not going for that. Right. I'll scare them if I talk to them like that. So, you know, I think because of, you know, the past generations being very stoic, not really showing a lot of emotion, being very, you know, hush hush and quiet. We talked about it earlier. And this generation, like super, I feel like very emotional, almost too emotional at times, right? And we see it on social media, like I said earlier, you know, people overreacting and really doing things that will change your life. You know, if you react a certain way now, you know, you're gone. You'll be gone forever. You know, people pulling out guns on people all because of, you know, I think this generation is almost too emotional, but I think it's up to us to kind of find that happy medium, right? Because I think it's important as a man to lead with action and to lead with logic. I don't think it's our job to lead with emotion. I think that's how women are programmed, and I think that's their default mechanism is to be more emotional. Not to say men shouldn't be more. That's not what I'm saying, because you know, as a father, we know, like, I've watched movies with my daughters and we're crying together. You know what I mean? So being vulnerable and being emotional, I think that's two different things, right? Because I see myself as being very vulnerable, but I'm not emotional. Because if someone was to say, hey, Jamie, you know, F you, bro, da-da-da-da, I don't care what you don't know me, man. I don't care what you're talking about. You don't even know me. Like, I'm not, you know, but 10 years ago, it might have been a whole different, it might have been, I might pull my pants up with a square up, like, what's up? You know, but that's what I'm saying is, like, it took me going through all the things that I went through. It took me going through the traumas and the death and the pain and all these things for me to even realize that. And I think it's important because you said that you grew up very comfortable and secure. It took you to go through pain and hardship and the loss of the love of your life in order for you to finally be able to allow yourself to feel these emotions. I think that you have to go through certain things, right? And the Bible talks about that all the time, right? Like you have to go through certain things. Like that's why I love Joseph's story, right? It's like you were betrayed by your own brothers. You were sold into slavery, right? And you ended up being the prime minister of Egypt. Like that is a crazy story. Like, and if you look at when Joseph, when they put him in the hole, right? And then they took the scarf back to their dad, and it was all bloody or whatever. And it was like, Joseph's gone. We believe Joseph died out in the field. They didn't tell their dad that we sold him into slavery because we were jealous of him. But if Joseph didn't go through all the things that he went through, right, and then he ended up getting in prison as well, right? If he doesn't go through all those things, he never saves his family from the drought that ended up happening, right? And I tell people all the time, man, if you're looking for the answers, all the answers are in the Bible. But that story of Joseph, it really resonates with me, and I can relate to his story a lot, because I feel like I had to go through hell. I had to be betrayed by my own people in order for me to get the tools and the skills that I need necessary for me to be who I am today. And I'm in a position to where I can now save my immediate family. And I feel like if I didn't go through those things, I would have never gotten those tools. And I think your story, spoke a lot about that as well with what you went through. So
it most certainly did. It most certainly did. I'm super grateful for all the lessons, man. At one point in my life, I would have called them mistakes, but I actually prescribe to the same line of thinking that you do, that you got to go through the things in order for you to gain that experience, gain the wisdom, so that you could be a conduit of that wisdom, and you can share that wisdom with other people for your own benefit. Point blank, period. Be the change that you want to see. But I tell you what, you can't be that change if you don't know, which way is up. If you haven't really figured it out. And you, sir, are one of the wisest 31, almost 32-year-olds I think I've ever met.
Wow, I appreciate that.
Very intelligent. You super, super aware of yourself. And so I just want to give you some flowers real quick and let you know that you have really impressed me through the year or so that we've known each other. And keep going, man. Keep going, man. Your story, you got to get that book going, because obviously I learned a lot about you in this episode. And you got some book material, man, in that head of yours. Start writing it, But I just want to give you some flowers.
Man, I'm not going to lie, brother. It means a lot to me. I really appreciate it. Sometimes I tell myself, man, you just little nappy head, snotty nosed kid from the hood. But all in all, though, I really don't give myself credit, and I probably never will, because I truly believe in my heart of hearts that it was God, man. It's God given, like his favor. The favor that he has over my life is I didn't do anything to deserve this. There's no way I did anything to deserve it. I just really believe that he gave me a good spirit, a good heart. And I believe that, when I had opportunities to do people wrong and things, I just decided not to. And I think that is the reason why you guys can feel this energy. And I think that's what made me a stand-up guy is the integrity piece, is the things that I chose to do and not to do when in the dark, right? Like I tell my kids and stuff all the time. I say never play in the dark, and what I mean by that is, never do things that you would be ashamed of me seeing you do. When I'm not watching, like don't never do anything that, because God is always watching. I know that sounds cliche, but it's true. It's true. And I believe our ancestors are watching. I believe everything that I do. I believe my mom and my dad is literally watching and cheering me on. So because I have that audience and because I believe in that, like, I won't do anyone wrong. I won't sell out for money or temporary status or anything, because those things are not important to me. Those things come and go. God said, I giveth and I taketh. And I truly, truly believe it. And I live it. You know what I mean? So, and I just want to say thank you, brother. I appreciate you so much. And you're another guy that I told you when I first met you. Like I told Terry, you and your wife, I said those are our type of people, right? And we don't say that about many people, brother. We just don't. But the Spirit definitely bear witness when we met you guys. We see what you're doing for your families, and we all want the same goal. We all have the same goals. I truly believe that. I believe that we are all God-fearing and we want the best for our families. And it's literally just a period at the end of it. I think that's just it. And when you got like-minded brothers like that, and I believe the same thing with Brother Maris, even though, I don't know his full story and I just met him, but the Spirit bears witness with him as well. Like I could just feel it on him. He's a real down to earth person who just wants the best for himself and his family. And I think we all do. So I thank you so much for giving me those flowers, brother. I take them, but I definitely got to give them onto the altar of the Lord, because, the Most High is he made me into this person. I didn't, I feel like I ain't did any. I feel like I'm just getting started. I haven't really did anything. I honestly,
you are, man. You are just getting started, bro.
So Jamie,
yes, sir.
On the beginning of the program, right? Mm-hmm. Me and you were conversating. You said that you wanted to ask us some questions. So I guess at this time we want to give you the floor.
Yes, absolutely. All right, now I want to talk about respect, because we that is the last piece, and we've been hitting on all of these topics the entire time, right? But about respect, I feel like when it comes to respect, you have to be a good listener, right? One of the things that I'm still working on is learning how to be a good listener. So I just wanted to open up the floor to you, brothers, and ask you, because you guys do have more experience in life than I do, right? What are some things that I could do to be able to help me to be a better listener, and so that I can, respond better, especially when it comes to my children? Because I feel like I still struggle with hearing my children out, and even people that I come in contact with in the world, and also, the response that I give.
There was an old saying that I always come back to when it comes to listening is, I think it says, speak or listen to understand, or speak to understand and not to be understood.
Okay.
So, and also when it comes to listening, there's an old saying as well that I will give a shout out to my pop-up. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. So those are the two key things that I go to when it comes to like being an effective listener. But really, it comes with practice, man, and it comes with study. There was a period of my life in my mid to late 20s where I read voraciously. And Maris can attest, Maris is still a voracious reader. And, I learned during my study that it's so much better to sit back and try and gain an understanding of the person that you're talking with instead of you trying to get them to understand you. You're able to make connections easier that way. You're able to make them feel more comfortable with you if you don't dominate a conversation and you give people space to express themselves, and you don't condemn them for where they are. Whether it's your kids or anyone, you don't condemn them for where they are, because where they are is not where you are, and that's anybody you talk to. And so you have to meet your audience, or you have to meet them where they are. That's the number one rule. You never want to press your opinions, or you never want to overwhelm somebody with your ideas. Instead, take a different approach and slow it down and really trying to understand where the other person's coming from before you speak. That way, you don't say anything that you will regret. And first of all, and secondly, you have taken the time to really figure out what they need from you, and what you can do to potentially help, because it always should come back to a mutually beneficial relationship. When I talk about that, I mean, if you're engaging in conversation with someone, seek to understand, not to be understood first, and always find common ground. Find a way to make it a mutually beneficial transaction, or else we're just pretty much wasting time. That's my opinion about listening, and that's my philosophy when it comes to listening.
That was incredible, man.
Yeah.
Gotta clip that. I gotta keep that one.
Thanks.
So in regards to me, man, so you said in relations to your children, right?
Yes.
All right. So my approach personally would be this. You have 4 or 5 children, right?
4.
4. You got 4 children.
Don't give him one extra child, Lord Jesus.
He knows how I feel about it.
So you got different ages, boy, girl, so you have to approach that, keep that in mind and approach that, and talk to them on their level. And I can say that because my son is 23. And during my relationship with my son, in different times in his life, I had to approach the situation differently. In his younger years, as you touched on earlier, right, you had to speak to your children in a certain way. But as they progress in age and understanding, you can increase the way you speak to them, because their understanding increases, right? But then also, we both know it's not about age, right? It's about maturity. So only you know the maturity level of your child and the palette of the conversation that they can take care or take in, right? So that's one thing, knowing your audience. And as you know your audience, right, you will put the conversation in a way that applies to them. As Terrell said, right, in regards to listening, right, a lot of people struggle with that. They don't listen. So I'll give you a prime example. Yesterday, my son came, right? We kicking it. And he has this thing where, right, my son is the spitting image of his mannerisms, all of that. So he's telling me about a conversation with a young lady. And I blurt out, damn, that's some shit I would say, right? But he doesn't like that because he's trying to establish his dominance in the world, right? He wants to separate himself from me. But I don't mean no harm by it, right? So pulls me to the side, we have a conversation. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, bro. The old me, I'd have been in my bag. I'd have been like, yo, I ain't trying to hear nothing you saying. Like, fuck out of here. Right? But it was me understanding that, this is a 23-year-old man. In order for this relationship to progress, I have to start listening to him as much as I want him to listen to me, because he's always going to be my son, but he's no longer a child. And even when he was a child, he still deserved respect. See, that's where our elders were wrong.
Yeah.
They thought because we were a child, we didn't deserve respect. But our generation, we now understand that, I got a mind, I got an understanding, I got feelings. I should be able to express myself. And that's what I did yesterday. I took what he had to say. I acknowledged, like, yo, you know what? You've already told me before that you ain't like that. My fault. And his response was totally different. It was like, yo, I appreciate that. It ain't that serious. You good. So to make a long story short, right? My advice to you is when talking to your child or anyone, right? It's recognizing your flaws, recognizing their flaws, and finding a common ground where y'all can have a positive conversation, Yeah.
Man, that was beautiful, man. Wow. Listen, that's how you know the spirit is here, man. I'm so glad I even asked you guys that question, because y'all answers, man, incredible. And I'm so glad, Maris, that you brought up, because while you were speaking, I was thinking it. When you said about that's where, our parents' generation, that's where they went wrong at. And you're right, because, my mother, and, God rest her soul, she never gave me an opportunity to speak when, she used to shut me off, cut me off a lot, and I feel like I project those same things onto my kids, and I'm starting to come into the awareness of, oh man, I'm doing the same thing that my mom did. You know what I mean? And I remember how that made me feel. It made me feel like, I didn't want to express myself to her anymore, and it made me like not want to be expressive to anybody about my feelings. I just wanted to hold it all in. And I think we all do that a lot, especially, people that's within our generation, because our parents, that's what they did, right? And I feel like you hit the nail on the head when you said, when you said that there was no respect.
Mhm.
It almost feels like your words don't matter.
Right.
Like, do what I say or else. Why am I supposed to do that? Because I said so. Now shut up and go somewhere. Right. It's like you were so, you shut down. You to the point where, and we carry that into our adulthood. I think a lot of people don't realize, like, your child is going to become a young man. Your daughter is going to become a young woman.
So,
right? Yeah.
So this is what I had custody of my son from he was 5 years old, right? I actually got discharged out of the military because I received custody of my son. So, when he came to stay with me, my mother pretty much babied me. I put it out there, right? I was the youngest. So I understood, since my mother passed away, out of the blue, that I wasn't prepared. So in my mind, since it was just me and my son, I said, if anything ever happened to me, I wanted my son to be prepared. So taught him to cook, maintain a house, iron his clothes, the essential things. And a lot of people would, call me up, stuff like that, and be like, oh man, you got him like a slave. But I understood that my son would be a man a lot longer than he would be a child. And if I don't prepare him for the world, right, that's my fault. I failed him as a parent. See, because a lot of people, they want clout for I'm a single mother, I'm a single father, I'm a parent, blah, blah, blah. But for me, it was always, this is my responsibility, regardless who's in the picture, right? My responsibility is to raise this young man or this boy to become a young man, right? So that is not only what I've taught my son, but to the young men that I do mentor, that, you have to be forward looking. You have to understand that what you're doing today, despite what you did yesterday, is in preparation for tomorrow.
Love that. Man, I love this, man. I
You just took us to church, bro.
Yeah, hey, bro, you could drop the mic
man.
right there. Wow, that's it right there.
Jamie said something in his questionnaire that really stuck with me, and it's really super poignant right now. He said, life is but a blur. The choices we make today don't just shape our future, they influence the generations that come after us. And literally, that quote is my entire existence right now. I strive to make the choices that don't just impact me today, but they're going to impact my entire bloodline. And I'm super, super serious and super, super focused about that, because I've seen firsthand what it looks like when a person like me does the things that they're supposed to do, how it impacts their bloodline. Like, just real quick, I know we're getting that close to time, but that quote is so important to me because I've seen it firsthand. Like, I met a guy in college who was the fourth of his name. Same name. His daddy, his granddaddy, his great-granddaddy, same name. The great-granddaddy started a company in the late 1800s. Very successful company. And that struck me in a crazy way. The efforts of that great-granddaddy have led to his entire bloodline of being extremely comfortable. And the guy that I'm speaking about is a fraternity brother of mine. Hopefully he gets a chance to see this, but I'm talking about you, man, because like that is just a crazy thing. Like now, dude is a doctor of business, travels the country, mentoring businesses because he's like my age. He owned a company and has already sold a company by 41 for millions of dollars. All because somebody 4 generations behind did what they were supposed to do. And now he's pretty much set for the rest of his life. And so are his kids. And it's just going to keep going. And I'm just so blessed and so fortunate to be in this correct mind space to where I can actually do that. And so think about that.
But that's why it's important that although we sat here, we talked about the traumas and the things like that, that you put emphasis on no matter what your situation is, it doesn't have to be the defining moment of your life. Now, Brother Jamie, right? We haven't had a chance to talk about it, but you yourself are a businessman.
Yes, sir.
So you take a few minutes and tell us about your few endeavors.
Yes, awesome. And Brother Terrell, thank you for sharing that story too, man. That's literally, I think that's why me and you get along so well. We have the exact same mission statement, brother. That's it. You know, it's all about being able to pave the way for the generations to come. And I think that God put that in our spirits because we are going to be the ones that change the directions of our families' life. You know what I mean? So I really truly believe that. I know it to be true in my spirit for all of us here. We will be the front runners. We will be the one where they look back and say, you know, it was my great grandfather Terrell or Maris who started all of this, and we are going to continue to do the work that they put there. You know, God willing, right? God willing. So as far as the business, yes. So I did go to college for business, president's list, all that stuff, straight A's. Went to started off at J. Sarge Community College, and I was looking to transfer after 2 years. Within the process of me doing so, I started a business, right? And so I was like, you know, business is one of those things where it's like, you don't really need a degree in business. People may disagree with me. I really don't care. But I know from experience, you really don't need a degree in business in order to open a business and to have a successful business. Most people that have businesses do not have a business degree, by the way. You know, so I did eventually dropped out of school. And I started a business. I started a social media marketing agency. All right. And there's a very cool story around it. I know we're getting up on time, whatever. So I'll try
do
to
your thing, man.
Okay.
Story,
Cool. I'll try to make it quick. But so I actually built a social media marketing agency out of necessity because a friend of mine, Harvey L. Freeman, shout out to my guy. He taught me how to edit videos and stuff in 2023, the end of 2023. He showed me how to edit videos and how to like clip videos and stuff and to basically use like CapCut, InShot, apps like that. From what he taught me, I ended up creating a TikTok channel. It was kind of like a channel where I would take clips from like Myron Golden. He's talking about the Bible, different stories in the Bible. A lot of content that had like shock value to it. So what I would do is I would get those, I would cut them up, I would clip them and do all these things, and I ended up going viral. I ended up amassing 6 million views and over 40,000 followers on Instagram and on TikTok. And once I cracked, I call it cracking the code. Once I cracked the code and figured out how to really use the algorithms, I was like, I wanted to know if I could like replicate it with my own content. So I went to the the Science Museum. I took my children to the Science Museum. And they have like this little robotic arm that kind of plays like air hockey, and you can play against it. It's like an AI robot arm. It's awesome. So I took a video of my daughter playing, you know, against this robot, and this was 2023. This was right before like the AI stuff really started to take over. And so then I put the right captions, I got the right taglines, I did the whole nine, and it ended up getting 2.3 million views in 2 days. And that's when I knew, oh crap, I can replicate this. And that was on Instagram. So I was like, not only can I replicate it for, you know, another platform, but I can create organic content that can go viral, right? So then I was like, man, I want to see how far this thing can go. So I started creating more. I created more channels, and I still have these channels to this day because I have everything is social proof, you know. That way I can always pull receipts. But yeah, so I ended up doing that. I ended up learning how to learning marketing. I ended up learning how to run ads, Google ads, Facebook ads, Instagram paid promotion, the whole nine, website creation, funneling. I just went through this whole rabbit hole, and I paid for courses, and I taught myself, basically really self-taught. And I had some courses online that I took, and I for hours I would be on DaVinci teaching myself how to edit videos and all this crazy stuff. You know what I mean?
So let me ask you this real quick.
Yes. Yep.
Real quick. Growing up, were you into school? I mean, I don't think we ever touched on that.
Was I into school when I went like public schools?
Yeah, like when you were younger, like were you the type like
Oh yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
okay.
I was so I'm ADHD like everybody. Everybody in my generation ADHD, right? So very ADHD. But I refused to take my medication when I was younger.
Okay.
So I was always on the honor roll, very intelligent, very smart. I love reading as well, an avid reader. One of my favorite books is Think and Grow Rich. And also, and I feel like that's everybody's, but
yeah.
everybody
Everybody got that on the shelf.
is like, yeah, I mean, it's Think and Grow Rich, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Yeah, but
Yeah.
definitely my two favorite books is the Bible and also um oh my God, I'm blanking. It's Outwitting the Devil. Outwitting the Devil. I love that book. So, but yeah, so very, very smart in school, had good grades. I played football for 2 years. I did very, very well. But with me, like switching schools a lot, it was very difficult for me. But yeah, I like school. I like school a lot. Even when I was in college, I had straight A's in college. Like I do very well academically, very, very well. Unlike a lot of the kids that grew up in my area, I was one of the few. I was actually top of my class all throughout middle school, high school, stuff like that. So yeah. I used to love school. I know it's crazy, but I did. I did a lot.
Not crazy at all. And I'm glad you said that, right? Because the knock is that children who come from inner cities or they come from certain environments, they aren't educated and things like that. So I'm glad you put that out there. So the viewers who are watching, they know otherwise.
You know what they say, man? They say if you want to keep something from a black man, and you
Put it in a book.
There you go. So I and I always thought it was super important because I respect what my ancestors did, and I'm real big on history. That's my favorite subject, and I'm big on honoring the dead and people who paved the way for us. So I feel like the fact that we even have the opportunity to attend schools and to be able to read and you know what our ancestors went through, man. It's like you better take advantage of this. You know what I mean? Like you better take advantage of this, and you better do the best that you possibly can to be able to honor their image. You know, and that's just how I feel. You know what I mean?
Nah, I respect that. Respect that. My fault. I didn't mean to cut you off, man. Go ahead. Finish telling us about your business.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so anyway, fast forward, taught myself all these skills, and I used to be a part of an organization called the UNY, and I had a brother named Uwitazah, and we were basically a congregation. It was the Congregation of the Mighty. We had a brotherhood called the Lions Den. We would get on calls like this, brother from around the world, and we would basically, we would do Bible studies, and we would break down scriptures, precept upon precept, like the Bible speaks about, and we would come together. We would talk about finances. We would talk about everything that brothers nowadays need to know about, like how to be a man, things that we're doing right now. We'd be congregating just like this, right? And through that connection, I was the right-hand man to a guy called Elder Uwitazah. And Elder Uwitazah was actually best friends with famous actor Brandon T. Jackson from Roll Bounce, from Tropic Thunder. And so he ended up putting me on a call with Brandon T. Jackson one day, and we immediately hit it off. And I got hired by Brandon T. Jackson to be able to run his social media profiles. And so that was like my big break. It was two and a half years ago. It was the end of 2023 and the beginning of 2024 when I worked with Brandon T. Jackson, and still have a good relationship with that brother now. Shout out to you, Brandon. That's my guy. But yeah, man, it was an opportunity of a lifetime. I worked with him. He was on his Still Detroit tour. He sent me this flash drive, which I still have, that has all his content on it. So he sent me the flash drive. I would break everything down for him. I would post it to his Instagram and his YouTube pages, and also to his TikTok. And I did that. I had a contract with him for about 8 months. That's when I learned everything, because he would have me on. I mean, I was on FaceTime with so many famous people, his friends in Hollywood. He would, when he was on tour, he would FaceTime me, you know, and tell me so many things. He used to always tell me, because I also go by, they call me Brother Jakeem. So he would tell me, hey, Brother Jakeem, like, with your energy, you belong out here in Hollywood. Like, I don't understand. How are you all the way in Virginia? He's like, what is Virginia anyway? Why are you over there? Like, you belong over here with us. You know what I mean? And that really resonated with me, because he gave me so much confidence coming from somebody like, he was a child actor, a child star, right? And he was in Lottery Ticket, Roll Bounce, Tropic Thunder. Like, he had so much success in Hollywood. And for somebody like him to be like, I would be chilling with my wife and my kids, and, you know, he'll FaceTime me, boom, let me see the kids. Let me see like, that was my brother. And to be able to have that dynamic, and my kids to this day, like, they seen his house and all that stuff, like, it really opened up their mind to like what is really out there as well. You know what I mean? And it was an incredible relationship that we had. It was an incredible once in a lifetime experience, and it taught me so much. And he actually taught me filmmaking, right? He had me on calls with famous filmmakers, and it was this team of Russian guys who worked with him, and they would give me pointers on how to like transitions and scenes and just the whole world of like how Hollywood did things. And man, that right there, I'm not gonna lie, took me to a whole nother stratosphere mentally, because I started to resonate with that, and I started to really have this identity of, okay, I'm that guy as well. Like, I deserve these things as well. And these famous people, they are just like me and you. They just did the right things longer. It's just all about consistency. Literally, it's about proximity, who you're around, which now I promise, I can tell by the look in y'all face, we could have a 2-hour conversation just about proximity, right? It's about proximity, who you're around, and it's about being consistent. It's so many different ways to the top, but it's the people who outlast everyone who become successful. So, you know, that's what it taught me. And that's how I know, you know, brother, I know my business is going to explode. It doesn't even really matter what I do, because I also have a power washing, mobile detailing and cleaning company, right, called Auto Glow Solutions. And whether it's my social media marketing company, which is called Short King Media, right? Shout out to all my short kings out there. I'm 5'5" myself, you know what I mean? So shout out to all the short kings out there. So whether it's Short King Media or whether it's Auto Glow Solutions, I know my companies will explode, because I'm just not going to stop until it does. Like, it's just that's just it. I'm going to continue to go hard. I'm going to continue to learn, to continue to grow, and to believe in myself. It's all about belief. I really believe if you believe in something enough and you don't quit, you will be successful. And I just truly believe that. That's it. You know?
Right. That belief is most powerful when it's of yourself.
Yes.
You have to start there. If you don't believe that you can do it, it ain't never gonna happen.
Yep. And Brandon, in my relationship with Brandon T. Jackson, you know, hearing it from somebody he was a mentor for me, but he was also where I wanted to be. And I think that's super important. I think you have to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. You have to surround yourself with people that are where you want to be. That is number one. Don't keep surrounding yourself with people, oh, that's my homeboy. You know, we grew up together. You know what I'm saying? That's the homie. I know it feels good. It's comfortable, but you have to get out of that comfort zone. You have to be within the proximity of the people that you want to be like. And you know, they say you are a accumulation of, you know, the people that you hang around the most. So, and I know that to be true, because when I was living in the hood, I was doing hood shit. You know what I mean? When I moved to the suburbs, I started doing suburban shit. So, you know what I mean? It's like, it's just, that's just the God honest truth, man. So yeah, I got the two companies, guys. As you know, I am a coach and former GM of Kid Strong. That's where I met Brother Terrell and his beautiful family. His amazing
Shout out to Kid Strong, baby.
Shout out to Kid Strong.
Yeah.
Muscles up.
So for the viewers, tell us about Kid Strong.
All right, man. So Kid Strong is a child development center. People a lot of people refer to it as a kid's gym. I mean, that's fine. But, we do a lot more than just physical. We focus on, whole child development, right? So we focus on cognitive, character building, and physical development. It's a 45-minute class. Within that 45 minutes, we make sure the kids introduce themselves to their peers and to the parents that's in the crowd with a handshake, eye contact, and they're gonna, they tell them their name. Then we get into a warm up because we always got to warm up our bodies, and we teach kids how to be able to use their bodies in the right way, right, in a healthy way. After we do our warm up, we get into some skills, whatever the skills is for that week. So, for instance, 1 week may be something physical like gymnastics. Last week we had gymnastics, but 1 week we had ordering your own food, right? So we teaching kids how to order their own food at the table. We teach them how to order their own food at a drive-through, giving kids an opportunity to learn skills that they will take, with them for the rest of their life. Practical skills, right? Not like in schools, right? The indoctrination camps, right? We actually teach kids skills that they can take with them for the rest of their life. Then we get into obstacle courses. We have some performance drills for a lot of the kids that are looking to get into sports as well. And then we end it with competition which is my favorite, because a lot of kids crash out when they lose. So we have to tell them, hey, listen, that's all, it's all about what we just talked about today, about emotional regulation. You're not going to always win. You have to be able to learn how to take a loss the right way and how to have sportsmanship. And I tell my kids all the time, because my kids get upset sometimes when they lose. And I tell them, I was like, okay, it was you so I tell my kids, I say, okay, it was you versus them, right? So you're trying to tell me, when it's you head to head against somebody else, as long as you win, life is good, right? Oh, everything's good. You won. Hooray. But if you lose, because it's a 50-50, so if you lose, screw everybody, screw the world. Like it don't work like that. That's not fair. That's not fair at all. You know what I mean? So I think Kid Strong is an amazing, one-of-a-kind program. I'm not just saying that because, that is my center. And I'm not just saying that because my kids go there. I'm saying it because the proof is in the pudding. And I think Terrell can attest to how powerful, having a program like Kid Strong is. And, I wish that I had a program like that growing up,
That's a wrap, though. Jamie, sincerely appreciate you coming on. Maris, my guy.
Hello.
We're gonna wrap this thing up, though.
Yeah, man, because we're gonna let this guy go get in the bed. All right, let's go.
Hey, I appreciate you guys, man.
I'm gonna
Thank
catch
you for your
y'all.
time, brothers. Yes,
All right,
sir.
man. Peace.
Hey, God bless,
Peace.
brother.
Peace.
Peace out.